speaker is Rachel Degrande from the French National Institute for Agriculture, Food and the Environment. She will speak on the cognitive powers of the domestic hen in a food search task. Yeah. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you. So I share my screen. Okay.
Yeah, we can see.
Right. Thank you. So hello, everyone. I'm Rachel, and I'm here today to talk about chickens cognition. More precisely, the aim of my talk today is to present you some results we had about exclusion inference in the domestic hen. So first, why study chickens cognition? Well, husbandry practices feature lots of changing environments, living environments for farm animals throughout their life, including broiler chickens and laying hens. And to cope with those environmental or social variations throughout their life, animals have they need some cognitive capacity, right? So actually, the animal welfare strongly depend on the range or the cognitive capacities they have to cope with that kind of environmental variations. Because and the fact is that knowing the cognitive range of an animal, so of the hen, enable us to know more about its subjective experience, and thus it enables us to improve their welfare according to it. The chickens are the most abundant farm animals reared in the world. They were domesticated 8,000 years, and they are a model species for avian cognition. For example, you may have learned about their communication skills, or their what I noted is, for example, their numerical abilities or their spatial cognition. However, there's still very few literature about higher cognitive capacities like Bruce understanding or more long-term memory. Among the coping capacity, the hens need to cope with environmental changing in husbandry practices. There is reasoning. Reasoning is when you can use some information about your environment to solve some problems you encounter. And when we talk about reasoning, we talk about most of the time inference capacities, like inference by exclusion. Inference by exclusion is when you can find an answer by excluding the other possibilities in any way. For example, if you know you put your keys in one of your trouser pockets and you touch the right one and you see it's not here, then you can be sure they are in the left one, right? So it's a reasoning by deduction, and it does not need memory recall strictly speaking, but to understand the semantic rule of exclusion. Our approach is based on animal studies. It's derived from other animal studies, which use the sloped tubes test to measure exclusion inference from visual information. So here the animal have to reason about something he does not see. The principle is to hide food. Here we hide mealworms in one of the two objects. Here we work with tubes. And the hen will be faced with different configurations randomly in one session, in which configurations, in which it can see the inside of one tube or of both or of none. With this picture, you can see a successful inference trial here from the waiting room at the very back. The hen saw there were no mealworms in the tube B, so she directly moved toward the tube A because she inferred the location of the mealworms here. and she couldn't see it from the waiting room. So we tested this capacity with the free choice test with 12 hens from of 2 to 3 years old, which benefit from an enriched living environment. First, we had to do a training stage in which hens had to learn that they could find mealworms in only one of the 2 tubes. And then we tested the spontaneous inference exclusion of those 12 hens with a free choice test. That means hens were able in this test to move from one tube to the other freely. So different configurations were presented to the hens. Here you have the standard trials in which hens cannot see the inside of both tubes. And these trials serve as perceptual bias trials as control. Here, in control trials, the hen can see the inside of both tubes. And then you have probe trials, either with a visible reward or an invisible reward. And this last one is the kind of trials of interest, because the hen has to infer the location of the reward here by not seeing it in one of the 2 tubes. All right, let's go to the results then. Here, so you have the performance in the standard trials. You see that hens performed at chance level. So that means there were no perceptual bias. Hens could not know the location of the mealworms when they did not see it. They did not see it. For control trials and probe trials, where the mealworms were visible, hens performed significantly better than chance. That means that when they see the reward, they go to it directly. So everything is normal here, logic. Okay, and here I present you the results for the inference trials. Here they are. Hens didn't manage to do it there. They performed significantly worse than chance, right? That is not what we were expected, but this means something. It means that hens moved preferentially toward the tube they can see inside first. So this strange observation is in line with another study from another lab, which conclude that chicks move preferentially towards hollow objects, and they hypothesize that it could be because it gives a glimpse of depth or a sense of living. So that is the first result. But maybe hens did not use such kind of complex cognitive capacity because they had the choice to use more simpler cognitive capacities, like it's the case in the free choice test. So the next step was to test it in a forced choice test, which is used at first attempt in other species. So 6 hens from the 12 previous hens were randomly chosen for this test. So that's the forced choice condition. From the waiting room here, the hen moved first toward this tube. And when she chose it by picking it or by just going too close to it, then I consider that she made a choice. But here it's a wrong choice. In fact, mealworms are not inside this tube, so she could have seen that she went toward this tube. So it's a failed trial, right? And to prevent her to move around the separation and to go to look at the mealworms here, they are here. Here I just put the grid because it's a failed trial and it's a forced choice test, so she cannot move from one tube to another to search for food. I let you the result for the free choice test. as a comparison. And here are the two first sessions for the fossil choice test. You see a quick increasing of performance of the hens, even if the group performance is at chance level. And especially 3 hens performed very well then in the free choice condition. Have the result for the 2 last sessions, and you can see that 4 out of 6 hens did perform significantly better than chance. Right, and the 2 other hens were too frustrated by the testing conditions, so they stopped to play. Those results are great, right? But it suggests that hens are capable to reason by exclusion, but that it might be there might be a cognitive threshold from which they need to have some reasons to engage in more complex reasoning. I mean, all right. Quite interesting, right? So we didn't stop there. We wondered then if those hens could be able to generalize the exclusion rule to another situation. So we tested the 4 successful hens with another object in the same conditions than in the forced choice test, but with this other object. Here are the results with the tubes for the free choice test and for the forced choice test. And here are the results for inference trials in the generalization test. You can see that hens performed significantly worse than chance. So they didn't generalize the exclusion rule. Instead, they moved preferentially toward the object they can see inside, as it was the case for the free choice test. So right, this results suggest that hence, yes, they are able to use exclusion reasoning, but maybe it's a situation sensitive capacity or an object sensitive capacity. Okay, that was the main results I wanted to present to you, but let's take a step aside then, because I wanted to present you some other results we had just after that. Actually, in the free choice test, we observed a strong side bias among individuals with dominance of right bias among our individuals. So we decided to measure the motor laterality of our individuals with a turning bias test. First, hens were trained to find mealworms at the very end of the testing area. And then we put a wall just at the front of the mealworms, and we observed the side with which hens turned around the wall differentially. Our results show that, yes, they show that the strength of the side bias and a right turning bias are positively correlated with the exclusion performance of the hens in the free choice condition. So, yeah, it might be that in the 2 tests, in the sloped tubes test and in the turning bias test, that's the left eye which is involved to see the mealworms first, which is related to the right hemisphere, and we know hens are strongly lateralized. So it might be that visual hemispheric lateralization is the missing link here. A study by another lab found that in chicks, the right hemisphere may be at lead for specially focused search for food. So we hypothesize that our hypothesis is that more lateralized hens could be better at performing such exclusion task in a food searching context. But yeah, obviously other studies are needed here to confirm or infirm our hypothesis. Okay, to conclude, we show that hens are capable to infer by exclusion. They did in the forced choice test, or at least yet they learned to infer by exclusion, and they did it only in the forced choice test. So that's why we could talk maybe about a cognitive threshold here. Our hens did not generalize the exclusion principle to another situation with other objects, so it might be a context-sensitive capacity, and might be that when hens do not associate a particular situation with the need to engage in complex reasoning, then they will move towards the object they can see inside first. But other studies, further investigations are needed to explore the behavior of the hens in exclusion tasks. At last, I would like to highlight the fact that such studies which study more complex cognitive capacity in farm animals could be beneficial for them, as it's changed our perception of these animals. Okay, finally, I would like to thank all the people included in this project, Ludovic Calandro, my PhD thesis supervisor, all my lab mates, the staff of the poultry experiment facility, where hens were maintained and tested. Obviously, all the participating hens, and thanks to Jennifer, the coach Jennifer, who helped me a lot to improve my speech. Thank you for the organizing committee, and thank you for your listening.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was a great talk. I really like these experiments where you try and see how far the system can be pushed. While we wait for questions in the YouTube chat, I sort of had a naive question. So in the first choice test, right, you see an effect after 54 trials or so. I'm wondering, so are they not simply learning where to go in that situation, or is that different from the reasoning by exclusion that you talk about?
Yeah, in fact, they might have learned. Yes, that's right. And because we cannot just pass this hypothesis, because if they didn't learn, they would have shown it in the very first trials, maybe. So yes, we cannot pass this hypothesis, and but at least they learned it. That's why I say at the end, and that means for me that hens are capable to use such kind of complex cognition, complex capacity, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we wanted to show, that in fact they are not complete idiots, right?
Yeah. I think let's see. I had a question. So he was wondering why he used specifically the blue object on the yellow background, if there's something linked to the color perception of the hens.
And not directly. The green and yellow background was to put a background which were not too far from what they have in their living environment. And the blue object was because we had blue objects. So no, there is no further reason.
Okay, I think we have one final question from the chat. So Elise asks, she thanks you for the very interesting talk, and she asks if you think that hens reared in poor environments would show similar cognitive abilities.
I think I didn't understand well the question.
So she's asking if you think that hens which are brought up or reared in poor environments I guess maybe not so enriched learning environments, if they would show similar cognitive abilities?
That's a great question, because some studies show that the environment, enrich or not, can affect cognitive capacities. Can do some cognitive impairments if there is too few enrichment, for example. So this is a first study which have to be done with other hens who live in other conditions. That's right. Yes.
Okay. So there's just one more question. Maybe you can quickly squeeze it in. So Pablo asks if how you dealt with the chemicals released from the prey in your tests.
How I dealt with
the chemicals released from the prey in the test, whether they could be using this to figure out where to go to.
with about the mealworms.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, that's why we made the perceptual bias control with the standard trials, where the hen can see nothing about the presence of the mealworms. We did such control before, during, and after the inference test, and we saw that it was completely at chance level. So that's why we could say that they didn't have chemical cues about their location.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.